Hey, speaking of a great weekend, it continues on, and something real special today I've been looking forward to. Obviously, it's special for me because my son Graham is teaching today. But I was telling Graham, Sunday mornings are cool because Saturday you get a chance to run through it. You get some of the nerves out, and then Sundays are pretty much just fun, although there's a bigger crowd here today, so it might make you feel nervous. I'm going to invite Graham to come on up. And not only is it just a great proud moment for me, obviously I love having my boy up here teaching, but he's also got a really cool angle on just a little topic that you've picked out today. So I'll let you take it, son, and I will enjoy hearing a third time, right. And away you go.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Man, this is a good crowd. Wow. No pressure. That's okay. I can't just get up here and start teaching and act like this. It's normal. I have to take a minute and just acknowledge, how thanks to Dad and just thanks to you guys for letting me get up here and do this. It really is. It's an honor and it's a privilege and it's a big set of shoes to fill. Dad usually gets up here and says, "Hey, we're going to hear from some of the best teachers in the world today," and man, we do. We get Stephen and Andy and Craig, and I feel like I'm on a first-name basis with those guys. I don't know. I feel like I know them. I've seen them teach enough times that that's kind of how I feel. If I ever meet them in person, I'll probably find out real quick that that's not actually true. Their security will have to inform me that no, you're not actually friends with those guys. But I feel like I am, so that's almost the same thing. Or Dad will get up here and teach, and Dad's been a pastor now for 20 years this year, actually. We moved here to Tucson in 1995, and he became a pastor, and shortly after that, I became 9 years old. So it's not quite the same level of experience that you get in here today, or occasionally Terry Rosemont will stop by and teach. He'll just come in and he'll do a teaching, and then he'll go back to his day job as chief of police for Marana Police Department. So kind of a credentialed list that we have up here compared to me. Is there anything that Terry Rosemont can't do, by the way, do you think? Because that's versatility right there. I'll bet he can't sing, though. Can you guys picture Terry singing? I can't picture it. I tried. It's funny, but I bet he can't sing. And that's kind of an inside joke between Dad and myself. Whenever somebody is really good and really talented at something and we feel a little threatened by it, we go, "Yeah, but I'll bet he can't sing." And we did that with Stephen Furtick recently, and then we realized, boy can sing. Man, in his last series, he just busted it out, a cappella, and we got to come up with something else now for Stephen because Stephen can sing. But so I'm here instead of one of those guys. I've taught at Vision once before, about 2 years ago. Since then, I've tried to improve myself. I got a little bit older. It was tough, but I did it. I started leading a V group, which helped a lot with the nerves because I'll tell you guys, they're a lot scarier than you are. I love my V group, but they get to talk back. See, that's the thing. Whereas you guys, I don't know if you know this or not, that's discouraged in this venue. You're not really supposed to do that. So maybe try not to do that too much. No, V group is awesome, but that has helped a lot. And then thirdly, well, I'm kind of young and I'm kind of inexperienced, so I grew a beard. So when I need to make a point, I can just kind of stroke it, and then maybe that gives me credibility. I don't know. We'll try it. We'll see how it goes. But I am excited about this topic. I think it's I had to decide what I was going to teach about. Dad asked me, and it's only my second time. I'm not very experienced. I don't want to take on anything too hard. So, eternal life? I don't know. Heaven and hell? Everything that comes after this? It should be manageable, right? Nothing too complicated or consequential or life-changing. No, it's fine. It's fine. We're gonna go big or go home. We're gonna do this. It's gonna be fine. I do like the topic, though. It's something I've always been interested in, and I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of re-examine some things that we probably kind of have in our heads without even really thinking about it. So we're going to look at what those things are first, and we'll kind of take it from there. So you guys are going to participate a little bit with me here. I just told you not to talk back, but you're going to work with me a little bit. So what you're going to do is picture in your heads for me just the very typical vision of heaven. Like if you were going to see heaven in a movie or you were going to see it in a painting, or what would it look like? You're just going to do that for me real quick. Everybody take a minute and do that, and then we'll throw it up on the screen. No, sorry. That's Dad's heaven. That's a blueberry field. He says that's what heaven is like. If you pastor in somebody else's church, there's always a chance their heaven will show up on your screen instead of what you were. There it is. Okay. So there's stereotypical heaven, right? So we'll go down the checklist, see what you got. Everything is white and glowing, right? Did you get that one? Everybody's wearing robes. There's clouds. It looks okay, but there doesn't really look like there would be much to do. You might get kind of bored after a while. Everybody sort of has little wings. It's never completely clear whether those are angels or whether we just get wings when we die, like Red Bull. That would be cool too. I don't know which it is. Bonus points if you pegged that there would be an effeminate Jesus in the picture, because there's always a Jesus, and he always looks like that. There's a rule somewhere that says if you paint Jesus, he can't look like he could do a push-up. That's you can't do that. Apparently, he always has to look like this. I don't know why. And then help me out, because I chose this picture, and then it was a while before I really looked at it. Is that Disneyland in the background? Like, is that the Magic Kingdom back there? I think it might be. They say happiest place on earth, but maybe it's in heaven too. I don't know. But that's what we all picture, right? You guys were able to do that pretty easily. Let's do it one more time. Let's okay. Now try to picture what hell looks like typically. What we usually see. Do that for a minute. There's no joke slide this time, okay? So we're really gonna get it. Here it is. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. So again, checklist. Okay, so people are not having a good time. That's kind of a prerequisite for hell. Everybody's naked, but it's okay because there's strategically placed fire, and it covers up all the parts that you're not supposed to see in church. So it's fine. You got these demon guys. They got the bat wings. They got the pitchforks. They're poking people. Sometimes these guys wear little red feety pajamas. Not in this painting. I don't know why, because it's hot down there. Why would you need the full? But they do sometimes. Sometimes Satan is there. He's usually got a big throne of some sort, because it's not a nice place, but it's his place. He's running the show down there. And my point is that was pretty easy for all of us to do, right? I mean, everybody kind of has these ideas in their head. Okay, this is heaven, this is hell. We don't think about it very much, but it's there. If you grew up in church, you started learning about this when you were 5, and so it doesn't seem weird. The best thing is the people who, you come to Christ later in life, and you get baptized and you start following Jesus, and you just have to pretend like this isn't weird. Like, just smile and nod. No, it's fine. It's all good. It's all good. We believe, but that's weird, but we can't say anything because everybody else is just acting like it's not weird. But the thing is, if you go out and you ask people in the world to do this same exercise, they probably could. They could probably do pretty well. It's in all the movies. It's in all the paintings. Everybody knows, okay, there's heaven, there's hell. That's what it looks like. But people out in the world don't have to pretend like it's not weird. They didn't sign up for that. They can look at that and say, that's really bizarre. And I think having that really bizarre image in our heads of what all of this is like, for hell in particular, it has a couple of effects on people. One is they just don't think about it very much. It just kind of seems like something kind of far away and something kind of abstract and kind of like a fairy tale. And if you're not a Jesus follower, then you just don't think about this idea very much. And then when you are forced to, when somebody gets sick or you have a near-miss car accident or you kind of face your own mortality, something like that, if you're out in the world and you think about hell like that, like it's like the fiery torture pit where you get tossed in and you get poked with a pitchfork and that just goes on forever, you're like, well, I could never go there. Like, I might not be the best person in the world, but there's no way that I'm not bad enough to deserve that. Like, who could possibly, like maybe Hitler's down there, like by himself, just hanging out, like, there is everybody, It's a bad German accent, but he's lonely, Hitler's all by himself, because who could possibly deserve that? What kind of God would, if God is a loving God, who could possibly go to hell? And so these are the ideas that the world has, and I think there might be a better way of looking at this, and there might be a better lens when we actually look at the scriptures, the New Testament, and what it says about heaven, and particularly about hell. We might be able to get a little bit different idea, and one that makes a little bit more sense, one that maybe helps us to relate to the world a little bit better. And that's what we're going to try to do today. So we'll start with a verse here. This is from Matthew 22. Jesus is teaching. So Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servant to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come." So he talks a bit more about that, the excuses that people made, and the fact that the invitation then was extended to more people. So some people came. It says, "But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing wedding clothes." Now, when you went to a wedding back then, you had to wear the wedding clothes. They would give you wedding clothes at the door if you didn't have wedding clothes. But if you didn't wear the wedding clothes, you hadn't really accepted the invitation. And so he said, "How did you get in here without wedding clothes, friend?" And the man was speechless. Then the king told the attendants, "Tie him hand and foot, throw him outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this day. Thanks so much just for everybody who's here today, just for the time that they've taken out of their weekend to spend some time with you. Be with me today as I speak and just help your words to come through me. Help us to learn some great stuff about you and be able to take it out, put it into practice in our lives this week. Thank you again. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So we'll acknowledge right at the beginning, this is a big, big, heavy topic, and this is, it's all about supernatural stuff and metaphysical stuff that's really beyond this life and anything that we deal with on a regular basis. So I'll take a page out of Andy Stanley's book and say, you might be here today, and you might not be in a place where you really believe that any of this is true. Somebody brought you. Sorry if this is your first weekend here, but somebody brought you, and so now you're here. But you're not really buying any of this just yet. And I would say don't feel uncomfortable with that. Sit back, relax, listen. You probably still succeeded at the picture heaven, picture hell game. So just compare what we're going to talk about today and see if it's something that you can make a little bit more sense of than what you usually hear, and see if maybe there's a way that you want to respond to that by the time we're done. I will say, if you haven't looked into the evidence that this book is something more than just something that a bunch of guys wrote down and made up 2,000 years ago, you should do that. That's well worth your time. Fulfilled prophecy. It's amazing stuff. Guys like Francis Schaeffer, C.S. Lewis, Josh McDowell, they've written entire books about this from the perspective of guys who went into it trying to disprove it because they didn't want it to be true. And then they were converted. So very smart guys, much smarter than me. You should read their books and look into that. It's well worth your time. I bring that up today because I think once we know that this is truth that we're talking about, that it gives us the ability to live it, even if we don't necessarily like everything about it. And there's probably some parts of this that we just won't like, because hell is kind of tough, okay? And even though we're going to look at it in a light today that might be a little different from what we've heard before, it's still kind of tough. It's not anything that we'll particularly love to hear about, and that's okay. If we know it's true, we can live it even if we don't like it. And to illustrate that, I'm going to introduce you to a little friend of mine here. Nobody's gotten it yet, so somebody's going to get it in one of these. I'm holding out hope, okay? You don't know who this is, so you think I've befriended a ballerina. And that's not true. This is the logo for the MyFitnessPal app that you can get on your phone, or you can get it on your tablet. And what you do with MyFitnessPal is you tell it what you want to accomplish in terms of fitness. Do you want to maintain weight? Do you want to gain weight? Do you want to lose weight? You tell it that, and then you begin to tell it what you are eating. And it quickly begins to tell you, no, stop doing what you're doing, because you said you wanted to be over here, and what you're doing right now, you're going to be over here. And so even though it's called MyFitnessPal, it quickly becomes not your pal at all. The relationship becomes very contentious. Love-hate at best. I mean, it tells you the truth like a good friend should, but at the same time, you just don't like it very much. Now, I don't know all of the details as to why the stuff that I want to eat, if I eat as much of it as I want, it just lands right in this region and doesn't go away. I don't really know. Like, I took high school biology. I have some idea of how calories work, but that's about as far as it goes. I sure don't like it. I would like to make if I got to make the rules, if I made up my own system, I would say, okay, it's real simple. The better it tastes, the better it is for you. And the more of it you eat, the fitter you shall become. Those are my rules, okay? So if anybody wants to vote for those, no. Unfortunately, we don't get a vote, right? I don't get to decide what the truth is when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to fitness. The best that I can hope to do is understand the way that it works, and in doing so, make choices that will get me to where I want to go. And that's what we're talking about today in a much more significant way. So we'll come back to this guy because some of this isn't always as much fun as we'd like it to be. But I will say that I think what we're going to talk about today, the version of heaven and particularly hell that we'll look at today, I think are more palatable. I think they do make more sense than the little game that we played at the beginning here. If you look at that traditional model of hell in particular, with the demons and the fire and the pitchforks and the feety pajamas, you might be tempted, and you won't because we're in church, but you might be tempted to actually ask, what the hell? That's a question you might ask yourself, and was actually the working title of this teaching. You see, I have the title card right there. Print that in the programs, but apparently you're not supposed to curse in the title of your sermon. That's frowned upon, so we don't do that. But you might ask. It's a really hard idea to get your head around that traditional view of hell. So we're going to talk about some things today, and they don't change things in terms of how we're to live, but they might make it a little bit easier for us to understand and certainly to present to other people. So I think that should be helpful to us. So that's where we will begin. We have two main points that we want to start with and build out from there. The first one, and you might have gathered this from the title of the teaching, is that we are all, in every way that matters, immortal. We are all going to live forever. Our bodies will not, but our souls, our essence, our consciousness, whatever it is that makes us us, is always going to exist. There's never going to be a version of this world that doesn't include all of us. And that's a big deal. That's important. It's just a question of what state we want to find ourselves in when all of this is over, but we still remain. So that's point number one. Point number two is kind of shifting how we look at heaven and how we look at hell. Looking at heaven as what our soul experiences when it's completely reunited with God, and that's everything that could be good about this life without any of the bad. And then reversing that and looking at hell as what our soul goes through when it's completely separated from God, and that's everything about this life except anything that might be good about it. So that's where we're going, okay? We'll build out from there. To start with that, we will begin in the beginning, like Genesis 1:1 beginning. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And he did. He created us as beings, as souls, as entities that were going to live forever. There's probably a really good study to be done about what got God into the creating business in the first place. We're not going to do that here today, but there's probably a good one there. Created angels first. There was rebellion among the angels, Satan being the leader of that. And then God created us. And when he created us with free will, which is interesting. He gave us a choice. He said, okay, I created you, so being that I created you and that I am all-knowing, almighty God, I know how you should live. I know what will work out best for you. I know what will bring you the greatest fulfillment and joy and peace, but I'm giving you a choice as to whether that's what you actually do or not. And that's interesting. I think it's necessary because if you create something and you don't give it any free will, then you've created what? I mean, maybe a robot, maybe like a science experiment, maybe like a really good dog, that just does whatever you tell them. But if you want to create an actual immortal, conscious, self-aware being, free will and choice are really tied up in that. You can't really separate those two. So God gave us that. And we chose poorly. And you have to say it like that because of this guy here. If you don't know who this guy is, this is, if you watch Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, this gentleman makes an appearance. They're looking for the Holy Grail, the idea being that if you drink from the Holy Grail, the cup of Christ, you will gain immortality. So that's kind of appropriate for what we're talking about today. Indy and his dad get there, but the bad guy gets there too, and he has the gun, so he's running the show. He wants to drink from the Holy Grail, and this guy shows up, and he's the knight, he's the guardian of the Grail. He'll let you drink, but you have to choose from any of the many cups that are there. It's not obvious which one is the Holy Grail, and the bad guy, of course, makes the classic bad guy error of picking the most golden, jeweled, ornate cup that's there, and this must be the cup of Christ, and drinks from it, and it very quickly becomes apparent that he's made the wrong decision. He ages rapidly, and he turns into a skeleton, and he turns into dust, and he blows away, and that's the end of of Mr. Bad Guy. Indy's pretty horrified, but this guy doesn't even blink because he's seen this before, right? Not his first time doing this. And he just goes, looks at Indy and says, he chose poorly. And that's what I think of whenever I think of watch anybody make a really bad decision. We chose poorly. We did not, Adam and Eve as the first humans, chose to listen to Satan, believe his lies, sin against God, choose separation from God. And we've all repeated that choice, right? By choosing to go against God at various times in our own lives. We live in a fallen world, so our world reflects that as well. Bad decision, because shocking that Satan would leave out information when he's trying to trick us into doing the wrong thing, right? But he did. And what he leaves out is really what happens to us, what happens to our souls when we're completely separated from God. He didn't tell us about that. God told us, don't do this. It's not the right way to go. We chose poorly. So that's how it all started. Where are we now? We're somewhere in the middle, okay? God could have left us in that position. He made us. He gave us free will. He said, do you want to be with me or be separated from me? We said, separated. So he could have left it at that. I mean, that would have been fair, right? But he didn't. He staged a rescue mission instead. That's how we're going to think about that. He sent Jesus down to earth to live as a man, to die, with the idea that would enable him to save us. There's a little bit about how that works. Jesus really, in this situation, had to be bait. And that, if anything, proves that God loves you guys more than I do, which you probably knew. But if you come to me and you say, hey, I'm in big trouble, so what I'm going to need you to do is use one of your children as bait to get me out of this mess that I've gotten myself into, yeah, no, we're not going to do that, okay? That's not going to happen. I'm going to have to say no, and you're going to need to take a few steps back from me, and we're probably not going to talk for a while, okay? We're not going to do that. But God was willing to do that for us. Jesus was willing to do that for us. John 3:16, right? God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And the idea was he would put Jesus in this world as a man. Jesus would live a perfect life. Jesus would never sin. And so according to the rules of the game, Jesus doesn't have to die. There's no, he should not die. He didn't sin. But God knew, based on the character of Satan, that Satan would kill him anyway. And when he did, he breached the contract. Now, if you do business, you have a contract, it's breached, that creates room for what? Either dissolution or renegotiation, at least. And through that process, and this is supernatural metaphysical stuff, I can't write you a math problem for how this works, but God got the ability to extend to us this invitation to be rescued from what we had already chosen, which was to be separated from him. It's still voluntary. We still have free will. We still get to decide, do we want to give our life to Jesus? Do we want to live like Jesus? But the opportunity was created. So we have that chance to be completely with God someday instead of being completely separated from God. But those are really the two options. And we don't know right now, we just don't. We can't understand, based on where we are right now, what either of those things is going to be like just yet. I'm going to try to illustrate it for us a little bit, the position that we're in right now. By the way, have you guys seen this marker? This is fantastic. Dad has always had the best markers ever since I was a kid, and this is amazing. I'm going to stick this in my pocket when I'm done with this gig and just take it home, I think. And I shouldn't have said that, because now he'll know where it went. I don't draw as well as he does, but I'm going to do a little drawing for us here today anyway. So we would have God, right, on our little diagram here. To stick with the stereotypical heaven, we'll do a little cloud here for him. So we could be completely with God in heaven. That's an option, right? I have terrible handwriting. You have to forgive me. We could reject God. We could be completely separated from God. Our verse talks about being in the outer darkness, right? So we'll do a nice, this is not grass. This is outer darkness, okay? Don't get it wrong. Outer darkness. We're not here yet. We're not here yet either. As long as we're alive, as long as we live on this earth, and we hope this turns out to be earth, depending on my geography skills, which are about as good as my biology skills, but we'll see how we do here. Get Africa in there. Okay, that's not so bad. All right. So there's earth, right? You are here, in case it wasn't clear. We're all here somewhere, okay? Some of us are doing this deal, all right? We love God. We have a relationship with God. We're doing everything we can to be as close to God as possible. We kind of look like the MyFitnessPal logo, actually, a little bit. But we're reaching up. We're trying to reach up to God, be as close to him as we can. But we're still on this earth. We're still somewhat separated from God. We can't be completely with him. We can't experience that yet. We have a sin nature. We sin sometimes. We try not to. We repent, but we do. So there's separation there. But God is extending us this invitation, this rescue. This is going to be a rope ladder, and I'm going to tell you that because it might not be at all clear when I finish that that's what it is. That's not so bad. All right, so we're reaching for that. We've actually grabbed the bottom rung of that ladder. So we accept. We are taking the rescue. It's not time yet, so we still have some separation, but we're going to go. Other end of the spectrum is, man, I'm going to get as far away from God as I possibly can. So I'm hanging off the dang edge of the world here. Could be I just have rejected the idea of God existing at all. Could be I'm just embracing, humanism and hedonism and everything that this world has to offer and ignoring God. Could be I actually worship Satan. There are a few people out there who are Satanists. They worship Satan. They're trying to get as far away from God as they possibly can, but you notice that they're still not experiencing complete separation from God because they're still on this earth. They're still breathing God's air, soaking up God's sunshine. They're still interacting with people who do believe in God, who do try to follow God. They still live in a world that benefits tremendously from the fact that we all have this, innate sense of morality that we all sometimes reject, but often will feel bound to live by. So they're not experiencing complete separation yet either. So nobody who is alive today is experiencing either complete togetherness with God or complete separation from God. But at some point, that changes. It either changes because we die and leave this earth, or it changes because the earth itself at some point is no longer going to be here. Isaiah 51:6 talks about the earth eventually wearing out like a garment, being gone. There's other verses that talk about, everything ended in fire or whatever. However it goes, the earth at some point is not in this picture anymore. And when it's gone, either because we leave it through death or because it's just gone, we either accepted the rescue, and we get to climb our little ladder here, or we get the other thing, that we get what we asked for. We get separation from God. We rejected God, and we have now succeeded fully in doing that. And this is how I want us to think about it going forward. The idea of heaven and the idea of hell is, did you accept God's invitation? Did you get back together with God? Are you now completely in God's presence? Or did you reject it and finally achieve, complete separation from God? And what is that going to be like in either case is kind of where we go from here. So where are we going? We'll talk about heaven first because it is wonderfully unobjectionable. Nobody ever has a problem with heaven. We need to lighten the mood a little bit from this, so we're going to talk about heaven briefly. Heaven doesn't have a very high bar to clear. As long as it's better than earth, everybody's pretty much cool with it, right? And in fact, it really just has to be better than hell. If you think about it, there's only two options. You could sell it that way. Heaven, it's better than hell. You could put that on the literature. I'm in marketing right now, and that's marketing, folks. So that's a free sample. Heaven, so you don't go to hell. It's fine. So we said heaven was going to be like earth, only without all of the bad stuff. So the separation from God that we experience right now, that's no more. The consequences of living in this fallen world, whether it be disease or disaster or being affected by the bad choices that other people make, those things are all gone. The fact that no matter what you achieve here on earth or how good your life is or how great any particular moment is, it'll come to an end at some point. That's the case here on earth. That won't be the case in heaven. What we're experiencing will go on forever when we're in God's presence. The Bible talks about how, Revelation talks about heaven, there being no more tears, no more sadness, no more mourning, no more suffering. That's all gone by the wayside. Those are all things of this earth that we'll leave behind. In Philippians, Paul talks about how we'll be transformed and we'll achieve these glorious heavenly bodies. And some of you are thinking, I don't need to be transformed. I already have a glorious heavenly body. And to you, I would say that the The Pride teaching was last weekend, and it's online, so you can get a recap of that if you do. Maybe that would be a good idea. But that's heaven, right? Pretty cool. Again, we're not shifting very much there. That's it's a good place to be. Great rescue offer. We should all reach up and grab that ladder and accept it. As to what happens if we don't, that's a little trickier, because we've established that we're immortal, right? Our souls are going to live forever. The earth is not. Our bodies are not. They're going to be gone. So at some point, if you have not accepted this rescue invitation, the earth will cease to be, your body will cease to be, there will be nowhere left for you to be, and yet you will still continue to be. So what happens then? What do we do at this point? And I'm going to submit to you guys that's hell, because you now are without the earth that you're standing on. You're now without the senses that come with having a body. You are strictly your consciousness, and you have nowhere to go. And so the question is, what happens to a person when they're cut off from their senses, they're cut off from other people, they're cut off from everything, and they just have to exist in that state? And we kind of know because of the antics of 1950s university professors, of all things. And I say antics because those guys got up to some stuff back in the day. I mean, they were a little scary. Mad scientist, Katie's nodding. She's been to medical school. She knows what these guys did. That's great. That makes me laugh. But they really did. They were up to all sorts of shenanigans. There doesn't seem to have been a lot of oversight. They were very curious and maybe not as ethical as they could have been, and consequently they found out some interesting stuff in ways that would get you thrown in jail or at least sued if you did it today. So this is Dr. Donald Hebb here. He was a professor at the University of Montreal, and his idea was to find out pretty much what we're talking about. What happens when you take a person and you cut them off from their senses and you isolate them from other people? Let's do that and see what happens. What could possibly go wrong here for Donald? So we recruited, in the university, put an ad in the university paper, and offered $30 a day to be in his experiment. Now that was good money back then, which is your first clue. If somebody offers you a whole bunch of money to be in a science experiment, you should say no. When I worked for Geico, I used to tell people that if you ever get a really big check from an insurance company, something really bad has happened to you, because that's the only way that happens. Conversely, if you ever get paid a whole bunch of money to be in a science experiment, something really bad is about to happen to you. Okay, that's how that works. These guys didn't know that, so they signed up for the science experiment with Dr. Hebb here. And you can see a picture of one of the guys here. He locked them in a little room. They had a mattress. They couldn't really go anywhere. They had the goggles on so they couldn't see, the muffs on so they couldn't hear, these like police academy dog bite sleeves on their arms. They couldn't really touch anything or feel anything. They got brought food, and if they had to go to the bathroom, somebody would walk them down the hall, to the bathroom. So it wasn't a perfect experiment in that regard, but it was about the best that Dr. Hebb could have done under the circumstances. Pipe some white noise through the building so that you pretty much were cut off. And he blocked out six weeks for this. He was like, yeah, we'll run this and see what happens. Had to quit after a week, so that didn't go quite the way he had planned. Most people only made it a couple days. He quickly found himself presiding over a bunch of crazy people, which is it's not usually how you want your experiment to turn out. I mean, it's interesting. It's data. You can probably write a good paper, but at a certain point, you have to stop this. And so he did. He might not have been a very good person. He was a pretty good researcher, at least. He took some notes. He made sure that he wrote down what was happening to his patients here. He said they experienced extreme restlessness, childish emotional responses, vivid hallucinations. The subject had little control over the content of their visions. One man could see nothing but dogs, another nothing but eyeglasses of various types, and so on. Nor were their hallucinations merely visual. One volunteer repeatedly heard a music box playing. Another heard a full choir accompanying his vision of the sun rising over a church. One had a feeling of being hit in the arm by pellets fired from a miniature rocket ship he saw. Another reached out to touch a doorknob in his vision and felt an electric shock. So these guys, when they were cut off from everything, they very quickly, and I'll use the expression, but it's not really an expression. They went to hell inside their own heads. And it didn't take very long. And it wasn't a perfect experiment. They weren't really completely cut off, but they very quickly just lost it. Their mind just began to create all of this stuff. And I think how much more if we were in a position where we no longer have a body, we no longer have our senses, we no longer have this earth, we can no longer reach out for other people. That's all gone, but we still exist, and there's nowhere for us to go. What does that look like? And I think that's hell. I think that, when you open up the Bible and you read, what the New Testament says about hell, about the sensations of burning and falling and disorientation and isolation and shame and regret and gnashing of teeth and outer darkness, and I think that's the best way that God could describe to us living here in this physical world what it's going to be like if we choose to cut our souls off from Him completely. If we choose not to reach up and grab that ladder and take that rescue. But it's not a threat. It's not, this is the shift. It's not do what I say or I'll put you in the bad place and let the guys poke you with the pitchforks. No, it's you need to be rescued because you've made a choice here that you can't possibly understand the full magnitude of what you're choosing. And you don't have to come. You have free will. I'm reaching down. I want to grab you. You're standing on the edge of a cliff that's crumbling, and you're saying, well, I'm not really sure that I want to, I want to have fun here on the edge of the cliff first, and then, eventually, right before it crumbles, I'll reach up and I'll grab that ladder, and God's just, come. There's nowhere else for you to go. Like, there's nothing else out there. You need to accept this invitation because the path that you've already put yourself on is the one that leads to the place that you really, really don't want to go. I want to kind of wrap things up here by reading something for you guys. I mentioned his name earlier, C.S. Lewis. He wrote a lot of nonfiction, but he wrote also the Chronicles of Narnia is probably what he's most famous for. This is the whole series in one volume, so it's pretty big. His last book ends with his characters being thrown through the door of a stable. They lose a big battle, they get thrown through the doorway of a stable, and it's understood within the context of the story that the stable represents death, that death is waiting behind that door. And I just want to read to you guys a couple of passages about what happens after that. So, here we go. Tyrion had thought, or he would have thought, if he had had time to think at all, that they were inside a little thatched stable about 12 feet long and 6 feet wide. In reality, they stood on grass. The deep blue sky was overhead, and the air, which blew gently on their faces, was that of a day in early summer. Not far away from them rose a grove of trees, thickly leaved, but under every leaf there peeped out the gold, or faint yellow, or purple, or glowing red of fruits, such as no one had seen in our world. The fruit made Tyrion feel that it must be autumn, but there was something in the feel of the air that told him it could not be later than June. They all moved toward the trees. Everyone raised his hand to pick the fruit he best liked the look of, and then everyone paused for a second. This fruit was so beautiful that each felt, it can't be meant for me. Surely we're not allowed to pluck it. It's all right, said Peter. I know what we're all thinking, but I'm quite sure that we needn't. I have a feeling we got to the country where everything is allowed. Here goes then, said Eustace, and they all began to eat. What was the fruit like? Unfortunately, no one can describe a taste. All I can say is that compared to those fruits, the freshest grapefruit you've ever eaten was dull, and the juiciest orange was dry, and the most melting pear was hard and woody, and the sweetest wild strawberry was sour. And there were no seeds, nor stones, or wasps. If you'd once eaten that fruit, all the nicest things in this world would taste like medicines after it. But I can't describe it. You can't find out what it is like unless you can get into that country and taste it for yourself. So Dad might not be that far off with the blueberry field, actually. That's our takeaway there. He goes on for pages and pages, and he describes, his vision of what he thinks heaven is going to be like. And it's allegorical. This is, it's fiction, but it's really great to read. And if you haven't, I would definitely recommend it. But there's another group that gets thrown through the stable doors. The kids aren't alone in that, and the other group is the dwarves in this story. It has kind of a Lord of the Rings feel to it in places. The dwarves, they wouldn't take either side in this big battle that was going on. They were skeptics, and they were just sure that nobody was going to take them in. They weren't going to be fooled by either side. They refused to accept the Jesus figure in this story, which is, is represented by a lion called Aslan. They didn't believe that there was such a thing. They weren't going to accept it. And so they also get tossed through the door of the stables. And the kids find them, in this world. And it's the weirdest thing because they still feel like they're stuck inside the stable. They can't see anything. They think everything is dark. They still smell manure, and they feel like they're on a hard dirt floor. They can't appreciate anything that's around them. And then Aslan shows up. He's Jesus, for the purposes of Narnia here. And we'll see what happens. Aslan, said Lucy through her tears, will you do something for these poor dwarfs? Dearest, said Aslan, I will show you both what I can and what I cannot do. He came close to the dwarves and gave a low growl. Low, but it set all the air shaking. But the dwarves said to one another, hear that? That's the gang at the other end of the stable, trying to frighten us. They do it with a machine of some kind. Don't make any noise. They won't take us in again. Aslan raised his head and shook his mane. Instantly a glorious feast appeared at the dwarves' knees. Pies and tongues and pigeons and trifles and ices, and each dwarf had a goblet of good wine in his right hand, but it wasn't much use. They began eating and drinking greedily enough, but it was clear that they couldn't taste it properly. They thought they were eating and drinking only the sort of things that you might find in a stable. One said he was trying to eat hay, another said he'd gotten a bit of old turnip, and a third said he'd found a raw cabbage leaf. And this goes on for a while. You see, said Aslan, they will not let us help them. They have chosen cunning instead of belief. Their prison is only in their own minds, yet they are in that prison, and so afraid of being taken in that they cannot be taken out. But come, children, I have other work to do. I haven't gotten through that yet, so excuse me. So I can't add anything to that. That's too good. I hope I'm half the writer that guy is someday. But that's what it really comes down to. Are we going to be with God or are we going to be separated? And it's our choice, and we might not like that it's our choice, but it is. He's given us that responsibility. We might not feel worthy of it. He says that we are. So we have to decide where we want to be, and the key is that for all of us, and this is so important, that we all still have time. We're all sitting here. We're all still alive. We're all still breathing. We're all still here. We all still have time. If you're here and you have reached out, you have accepted that rescue, you've accepted Jesus, and you've grabbed a hold of that ladder, don't let go, man. Hang on. This life can get you get bogged down in it, and it's so easy sometimes to just kind of let your grip slip and just remember where you're standing. Don't do it. And then remember what that other hand is for. Grab somebody, Bring them with you, Only God can save people, but every one of us has got to be in the unique position to help somebody. So just try to remember that. It's easy to get distracted. If you haven't reached up and grabbed a hold of that ladder yet, man, just think about the fact that everybody who's come before you, everybody who didn't, they would give anything to have just one more day so that they could grab a hold of that ladder. It's too late for them now. It's not too late for us. So if you want to talk more about that, if that's something that you're willing to do, if you want to accept that rescue, man, after this, come talk to me, come talk to Dad, come talk to Charlie or Brent, anybody who can talk to you about this. Don't waste any time. We all still have time. Nobody knows how much, Tomorrow could be the day that it's all gone, or tomorrow could be the day for us. We don't know. So that's where I'll leave us. I hope this has been helpful to you guys. I hope we'll go forward and we'll think about this, and it'll impact the way we live. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this day. Thanks again just so much for everybody who's here. Thank you just for the chance to dig into your word. Thank you for giving us as much information as you have about all of this. I pray that this has been helpful to everybody, and that just the way that we look at this might change a little bit. thank you for just everything that you've done for us. Thank you for not leaving us to be separated from you. Thanks for sending your son. Thank you for Jesus, for giving us the opportunity to be rescued. Please help everybody to take advantage of that and see what we can do to help as many people get there as possible. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.